Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my photography chat live stream where we come together as a photography community and catch up on what's going on and what's new. I'm doing well. I hope you guys are doing well. And it's been, gosh, hold on. Would you like to? No. Okay. Yeah, I had a little pop up on my screen I had to get rid of. Um, I'll leave this as an open Q&A, and then I have a few things I always like to kind of talk about. I guess it's been uh, kind of a busy week in the photography gear world, particularly with the release of the new um, Olympus or OM System 50 to 200 f2.8. And a lot of people are asking me if this is the lens I'm going to get. And most likely not. It's not a focal length I really need, especially at f2.8. I think if I were doing more, maybe if I was doing more event photography type work, I might consider it, but I have a 35 to 100 2.8, the Panasonic. So that kind of covers my needs for event photography. And, uh, so I don't know what I would use it for. It's not quite long enough for birds in flight type photography, even bird on a stick, maybe some of that, but usually even if they're in a tree or something, you need as much reach as you can get, and 200 just not going to cut it. So for me, it's just not a focal length I really use much. And if I do want to get in that range, the 40 to 150 f4 to f5.6 kit lens, I think is good enough for me, right? Uh, and then let's not forget that Panasonic has their 50 to 200 f2.8 to f4, so you lose a stop on the long end, but it's like half the price and I think half the weight. So if I were to go that route, I'd probably go with the Panasonic Leica, again, because I wouldn't use it for birding and wildlife. If I needed that focal range, I'd probably just go with the smaller, cheaper option. But it does look like a fabulous lens. I mean, with it, you can do the full 50 frames per second. Optically, it's probably superior to just about everything else out there in the Micro Four Thirds world. And with the dual image stabilization, it would make great for video. Um, and again, it's just one of those lenses. The focal length is just not quite there for me. So that's kind of where I stand on that one. But let me know what you guys think about that lens. I got a great question from Gary this morning or last night, but I replied to your emails. He sent me a couple about the 50 to 250 compared to, say, the Sony 70 to 200 GM version 2. Because the GM, the question was essentially, the GM2 has four focusing motors in it, and they claim four times the focusing speed versus their version 1 of the 70 to 200. And there's really no information on how many focusing motors the 50 to 200 2.8 uses. But I think it's safe to say it probably has two, uh, linear motors. Because the reason the Sony has four is they have in the lens construction or design, there's two focusing groups, kind of some here in the front of the lens and some on the back of the lens. And these two focusing motors, there's two on each set of groups, kind of work together to, achieve, I would imagine, an overall smaller, less complex design in the sense of how many lenses you need to achieve focusing, closer minimum focusing distance, and ultimately faster autofocus because the two can work together uh, to achieve focus at the same time. That said, I don't think Sony has any cameras that'll do 50 frames per second. Maybe I could be wrong. I think the A9 Mark II does 30 frames per second. But our cameras will do 50 frames per second, and the 250 to 250 is rated for 50 frames per second. So ultimately it should be just as fast, if not faster, than the GM lens from Sony that has four focusing motors. Uh, but it's all speculation on my part. I'm not a lens engineer. I'm just trying to extrapolate from things I've read online of how lenses are made. And I don't think it's anything to worry about. I'll give you one other example. The 300 millimeter f4 is very fast lens, much faster than the uh, 150 to 600 or 100 to 400 from OM Systems in terms of point A to point B, say minimum focusing to infinity. It's easily twice as fast, if not faster, to achieve that. And the big white, the OM 150 to 400, OM System has stated in interviews that it's 20% faster than the 300 millimeter f4. So if you extrapolate from that, in theory, the 150 to 400 can handle even faster than 50 frames per second if the 300 is already at 50 frames per second. But there's no way for me to test that. It's just the, the kind of precision instruments you would need to measure something like that is beyond what I'm capable of. Okay, so there was that. Um, and the Nikon ZR, really interesting camera to me for some reason. It's not too dissimilar from the Panasonic Lumix S9 in that it's a very compact rangefinder-ish style uh, cinema camera, right? Not that the S9 was marketed as a cinema camera, but it has a ton of cinema features. It was marketed for content creators, so the video feature is pretty robust, as is in the Nikon ZR, if not more so. And it's a similar size and weight, and it's relatively compact full frame camera, but it also lacks the uh, mechanical shutter. But it has just about everything else, including a hot shoe. Now I don't recall what the sync speed was on it, uh, for the flash, but it did have a look like a working hot shoe because it had pins and everything in there. So that is a significant advantage over the Panasonic S9, at least for photography purposes, assuming the sync speed is reasonable. 1/100th, maybe it's 1/250th again. If anybody knows, if you can put that in the chat section for me, that'd be great. Then I can elaborate a little more. But yeah, so that's a very interesting camera. The Z6 III, the Z5 II, the Z8, all these cameras are nice cameras. The ZF in particular is now in silver, which is I may have bought it if it was in silver to begin with. I just like silver cameras because I've been shooting black cameras for so long. It's a nice change, and but yeah, all of these cameras never intrigued me to the point that I pulled the trigger on it. Unlike I didn't have to hesitate or think about the OM3, the OM1. These two cameras, were just no brainers for me and my workflow and the kind of photography I do. Um, and I was going to title this video Nikon minus one, but I don't think this topic deserves a whole thumbnail and topic, right? But if has anybody seen that movie Godzilla minus one? I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I'm taking inspiration from that movie. And I wanted to title this thumbnail today Nikon minus one because, and I hope, I'm sorry if you're watching, Owen, but we went out last week and I talked about it in last week's stream. It was pouring rain, and both of us had our cameras out to our side in this pouring rain. I mean, it was a serious downpour. Uh, but the next day after the stream, I got a message from Owen saying, uh, my camera won't turn on. and ultimately he sent it into Nikon to get repaired. So you should get that back next week or so. But yeah, so apparently he got water damage in his Nikon, and uh, my OM3 is perfectly fine, right? Because I've taken it out. I don't like to do it. I don't like to be in pouring rain myself. Never mind my cameras. Uh, but it happened to happen, and twice now I got caught in pouring rain with that camera with a weather sealed lens, no problems whatsoever. So it's a very robust weather sealing, as Home Systems Olympus is known for. Uh, anyway, so that's all I wanted to say about that. So that's why I didn't title the thumbnail Nikon minus one, because I didn't want to talk about Nikon the whole stream. But they are great cameras. I still shoot a Nikon DF, the old range vintage style camera, time to time, not so much. And then I was a Nikon shooter for many years before I switched to OM Systems, and yeah, no regrets there at all. Going to Micro Four Thirds, it's been probably in photography the best decision I ever made. For me, I know many people have gone the opposite direction, right? I run into viewers time to time out in the field or at events that were shooting that knew me. I got spotted, so to speak, but they knew me because of my channel and all of the tutorials I have on Olympus and OM Systems cameras. But they had since switched to some other camera system, either, you know, primarily Sony, but also Nikon. Funny thing is, I feel like a lot of people that buy Fuji, let's say they're currently shooting Micro Four Thirds, they usually add Fuji to the mix. They don't sell off their Micro Four Thirds. At least the very small sample of people that I know, that's how it's worked out. And me being one of them, I've added a Fujifilm system to my to my hobby or whatever, but it hasn't replaced uh, Micro Four Thirds, not even a little bit. They all the other cameras back here get a fraction of use compared to now my OM3, which is probably my 90% camera right now. Um, I use it for everything, everything but paid work. For paid work, I take the OM1 because that has grip and it's just a little more ergonomic for doing paid work, and it looks more professional. Although the OM3, I have taken it on some events and had a lot of fun with it and got some comments on it, but I feel like I don't want the events to be about me and my camera. I want to be there kind of more invisible and innocuous to the event and just be there to take photos. It helps me concentrate a little more when I have a serious camera versus, say, a fun camera. Oh, but yeah, so the ZR is really interesting, but the price point, 2000 some dollars. I mean, I can get a S9 for, a used one for probably half that. And it would put me in the L mount system, which I like a lot more than Nikon Z mount system. Not that the lenses are any better; they're both excellent lenses from both companies in both mounts. But the price point to get the same quality of lens in the L mount system, I believe, is lower overall. So that's why I like the L mount system, and particularly their Trinity, right? The 35, 50, and 85 1.8s are all excellent lenses for the price point. Punch way above their weight, in my opinion. One day I'll be back in the L mount system. I'm shopping S1R Mark IIs again, although that it may be a while before I can get one of those. But I always keep an eye out on price trends and where it's going. I would love to get an S1R Mark II. The original S1R, I thought about that because you can get those for like 11, 1200 bucks now. But for the things I'd be using it for, in particular, like I like to take pictures of Ellie, my dog. That's why I got into photography, was take pictures of my man's best friend. Uh, it really didn't perform too well, especially for any kind of sports action. If she was moving, it really suffered. Because I had an S1R for a little while and returned it because of the lack of performance in taking pictures of my dog. For landscape and everything else, it's perfectly fine. But yeah, sports action of any kind, it's a dud. But okay, let me go into the chat section. If you guys have any questions or want to talk about anything, feel free to chime in. Wow, it's a lot here. John is here. Good to see you. And Henning, and good this side towards screen. Good morning. Zachary and David Black, good to see you. Erna, happy Sunday. And Paul, good to see you. Gosh, Paul, you've been a viewer. We've been together a long, long time. You're all the way out in Australia, but uh, it's always good to see you. And let's see. There's a question right here from Erna. I do mainly long exposure night photography, star trails, light painting. Is the OM3 or OM5 Mark II better for that? I would go with the OM3. Now, it's not to say that the OM5 can't do the same thing. Honestly, for all but for all intents and purposes, you're going to get the same image quality. Uh, but the OM3 has the bigger battery, and that's really important for long exposure, star trails, light painting, because you're going to be using the battery a lot. And that's the primary reason I would choose the OM3 over the OM5 Mark II is the battery life. Not that you can't just plug in a USB-C power bank and that would resolve the OM5 Mark II issues uh, with battery, right? But ultimately, I feel like the OM3 will be a less frustrating user experience overall. You don't have to remember to bring a power bank all the time. Now, if you're going to be doing star trails overnight, because star trails can take like 4 hours minimum, 4 hours to get almost a full circle or the appearance of a full circle, uh, then you need a power bank anyway. But like I said, long exposure, night photography, and light painting, these three things you don't typically do for 4 to 8 hours. Typically, these are like 30 minutes, an hour, and on through will give you less frustration in that sense. But if you can deal with the battery issue, the OM5 Mark II will do just as good a job. I believe it also has a Starry Sky AF and uh, trying to think if there's anything else. I don't think there's really any major differentiation between the two other than the battery life. Oh, and thank you for 50,000 subs. I appreciate that. Took a long time to get here, didn't it? Not that it means anything really. It's just a number. Ultimately, it's how many people have I helped and guided or answered questions, that kind of thing. I wish there was a number for that. And did I get the OM3? I did. I did. So I will talk about that. Uh, I'm 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 about 90% happy with it. Let me get this. I was doing so I'll show you some photos I did this week. Let me get this honking lens off of it. So you can see it. I'll just put a smaller. Okay, so and the strap, of course. Okay, so this is the Leo photo. In fact, you can see the naming on there. Arca Swiss plate and L bracket. This is removable. So what I like is now I can just mount the camera directly to my tripod without having to add an Arca Swiss plate like I did with my half grip. I had a half case that I always had to put an Arca Swiss plate onto. And the grip on it is, again, relatively minor. It's not as big as, say, the ones that I've seen that were made of wood. I felt like those were just a little bit bigger than this camera really needs. Uh, so I like that. And we have quarter 20 screws all along the bottom. And we have another couple here on the side. And we have a little cold shoe here so I can slide things in and out here. Maybe a microphone, maybe a light, whatever if I'm going to do vlogging without having to use the camera's cold shoe. Because really, putting anything other than a flash on your cold shoe, or, well, what I'm getting at is I don't, I don't want to overuse the cold shoe more than I have to, right? So the fact that I can now reassign devices to this side gives me a little bit more peace of mind that I'm not going to jack up my cold shoe. Uh, and then having a full base plate also reinforces, the overall bottom of the camera and takes a lot of the pressure off of the tripod mount in the camera. And yes, this is an all metal build on the camera, but you don't want to jack up your tripod screw and mounting here. Uh, the more you can avoid that, the better. So that takes a lot of the stress off of that because you just screw this in one time and you're set, and the weight is all evenly distributed along the bottom. So why did I say 90% and not 100%? Well, it comes back to these quarter 20 screws. Oh, and then I'm sorry, there's a magnetic piece in here to tighten and untighten things, right? So if I want to take this off or if I want to remove this, I can just use this little tool. These quarter 20 threads, because the base plate is relatively thin, and I like that it's very low profile. It doesn't add much bulk to the camera at all. Like if we look at it from the back, it just adds maybe about a half a centimeter, okay, to the bottom, right? 5 millimeters, give or take. Whereas my half case with an Arca Swiss plate added at least a centimeter to the bottom of the camera, and it was heavier than this base plate alone because of the leather and all of that. But these screws are not deep enough for a lot of things. So I end up having to put washers in between whatever I'm attaching and the base plate. So, for example, I have a power bank with a quarter 20 screw, and it doesn't fit tight up against the bottom of the camera. Uh, I have grips that don't fit tight. Like, let me see this one here. I haven't tried this one yet. I like this little mini tripod, but I bet this one doesn't go all the way in either. Yeah. It doesn't go all the way in. I don't know if you can see that. There's a little bit of a gap between the camera and or the base plate and so now all of the stress is on the screw and not being distributed to the base of the tripod. So uh that is not as big a deal. But for example, I like to use this tabletop tripod. I have a smaller Arca Swiss clamp than this is just the one that was handy. But I had to add, a quarter, an Arca Swiss clamp to this because even this screw, it's not that big, but even this screw was too long for the threads in the bottom of this. Uh, so I need to find my small Arca Swiss clamp, and then I'll be fine with this. But it just had to help me adapt some of my workflow when I'm using these kind of things that I used to just screw into my other case, no problem, screw it in nice and tight because the sinkhole or whatever was deeper in here. So other than that, uh, this is about as perfect as you can get on a case. Now the sinkholes on this side are fine. They're plenty deep, right? They go almost the whole depth of this L bracket. So I like this. But ultimately, there's more pros to this plate than cons. So I'll give you a link. This is my eBay affiliate link to this particular. Where's my purchase history? I paid $66 plus tax, so it came out to like $72 or something. Now it's back up to $71. There was a window where it was $66, but uh, oh, come on, computer. Okay, so there's an affiliate link for that. I'll earn a commission if you decide to buy it, which helps support the work that I do here. Okay, but yeah, I'm 90% happy with this plate. The other thing I noticed is that my finger seems to hit the creative dial a little bit more than it did when I was using my half case. Because the half case had a similar size uh, grip protrusion here, but I think it was more recessed, so I had a little bit more, or gap here than I do with this one. Not a big deal. Now when I grab the camera, you know, with some muscle memory, my finger's not going to have a problem. But I did notice that because I used to do kind of like this. Now I have to kind of just do like this instead of this, if that makes sense. But I would recommend this over the half leather case, primarily because of the utility of the Arca Swiss plate here and the L bracket here. Because I like to do panos and a lot. And Roger's here, good to see you. And Paul says, I'm really happy with the 140 to 150 Pro. I cannot see new Olympus lens giving me five. Yeah. Yeah, there's also the 40 to 150 f2.8 Pro, which is smaller and half the price, more than about a third the price, with almost the same reach and capability. I don't think it has quite the magnification on close up like macro stuff, but I think it's a fair trade off, right? Price, weight, size. Uh, and ATR Bear, good to see you. And oh, yeah, I was asking you about this last week, right? So you got the Voigtlander, Semjon got the Voigtlander 25.95. Didn't have a lot of time to test it, but it's fun. Lots of character, as the kids would say. Very soft at 0.95, fairly sharp at 1.4 onwards, very sharp at 2.8. Yeah. So that's very similar to the testing that I've seen online for that lens. Uh, but yeah, have fun with that. That's awesome. Voigtlander, the experience of a Voigtlander, it's very, very, it's the very well constructed lens. It's very high quality. And hey Jeff, how are you? Jeff's also been with, as many of you, you've been viewers of mine for a long time. Like you, Rob, the new white lens is not a focal length I would use. I already have the 40 to 150 2.8 Pro. So that reminds me, I did put up a survey. I'll share that with you. Here's the survey. Let me just enlarge this. So 145 votes, 10%, definitely buying it. 61%, it's too expensive. Uh, I have a similar focal length already covered, i.e., the 40 to 150 f2.8 is 21%, and 9% still undecided. So there's that, and it's not a bad sample. 145 votes. So that would mean about 14 people are definitely buying it, and about 80 people think it's a great lens, but it's too expensive. And then 16 people already have a lens that they're happy with that covers a similar focal range. I tried to put a specific lens here, like the 40 to 150 2.8, but then I got to thinking there's so many lenses in this focal range at various apertures, from f2.8 all the way to like what I have, the f4 and f5.6, that I just couldn't put one lens, right? So I just said similar. And then 9% undecided. That's kind of interesting. So that's probably what, about 12 people. So, out of the 145, that's how that splits out. And it kind of makes sense. Uh, what's interesting is, with the release of this lens, OM System is definitely targeting high-end customers. The OM3, the OM1 Mark II, the now this lens, the 40 to 150. I'm sorry, the 50 to 200. It's kind of interesting to me that, and that might explain why some of the financial numbers we saw last week about 2024 is they put a lot of money into developing the 50 to 200. And it's not a small thing to develop a really high quality lens that has virtually no compromises, right? For its given focal length. And so I can see that and the OM3 coming out. These two cameras together, they put a lot of time and money into developing these two brand new products. So that's a very, very encouraging sign to me. Okay. That OM Systems is still, doing as much as they can, right? They are doing, I mean, given the size of the company, they're doing as much as they can to put out the very best products. And I think the OM3 is a fantastic product. I think this 50 to 200 is also a fantastic product. And they're pricey though, right? I mean, worth every penny, no doubt, just my opinion. But these are not entry level cameras, right? And entry level lenses. I would have loved to see, or I would like to see next, something more budget friendly, like a OM20 that I talked about last week, something like under $500 that'll get you into the OM System family. And throw on, and the kit lenses are great as they are. They don't need to make a new kit lens. Um, that would be a nice way to kind of round out 2025, is at least announce a budget camera, right? Something that is more accessible to get people into the system. Because a lot of entry level cameras, you don't need weather sealing. Um, all you need is basically a mic jack, and then all the computational features, right? Uh, so something along the lines of like the Canon R10. That's an eight or $900 camera. Imagine a Micro Four Thirds camera for $500 that'll do virtually the same thing and more. It just makes sense to me, because the Canon T7, that old DSLR, is still one of Canon's best sellers. And why? Because of the price point. You can get a Canon T7 with a couple of kit lenses for like 500-600 bucks. If OM Systems could do that, I think they would have a killer system. Because right now the OM10 or EM10 Mark IV is still like 700 bucks with a lens, and that's that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people just getting started. And as good as the EM10 Mark IV is, it doesn't have phase detect. It doesn't have well, that's the main thing. It doesn't have phase detect autofocus. It doesn't have a mic jack. I don't remember the screen if that fully articulates or just tilts down. but it's a little long in the tooth. Long story short, it needs to be updated and brought down in price and call it an OM20. And I think they'll have a winner. But that's, what do I know, right? Okay. And Simjan says, yeah, OM are the only ones I trust with the rain. I think the Leica SL also have IP rating, but I have no experience with them. All the other brands just claim weather resistance. Yeah, I mean, you hear stories left and right, okay, on both sides or on across camera brands. I should say. I've been watching too much news, other news, not camera news. But you hear it on both sides, on across camera brands. How great the weather sealing is on a Nikon, on a Sony, on a Panasonic, whatever, Canon, and then you hear others saying, "Yeah, it sucks," right? Regardless of brand, there's probably people out there that say the OM system weather sealing sucks. I don't know, but because I'm kind of in a bubble here, right, with other OM system users for the most part. Uh, all I can do is tell you my experience with it, and I've never had a camera have water damage. Even my non-weather sealed cameras, even though they've been rained on. Why is the 50 to 200 so much bigger than the Penny 35 to 100? Well, there's a ton of reasons for that. Um, clearly the focal length, right? The focal length going out to 200, so it's double the focal length, and that alone requires the lens, at least in diameter, to be bigger. Okay, so let me just do some simple math here. It's very, very simple math. Where's a screen I can use? So you have a 100 millimeter, and you divide that by the aperture. Okay, or the front element has to be at least, in this case, let's round it to 36 millimeters, right, in diameter. In practice, the front lens element opening has to be 35 millimeters. Not necessarily the front lens opening, excuse me, but somewhere inside the lens, the focal point has to be where the aperture is, has to be 36 millimeters in diameter. With a 200 millimeter, it has to be, let's say 72 millimeters, right, in diameter. The entrance point, the pupil point, and which would imply the front element has to be bigger than that. Um, so the diameter has to be almost double the size, right? Basically, it has to be almost double the size. So if we go back to uh, let's just look at the specs real quick. So if we go back to the specs, right? If we look at the ring mount, 77 millimeter front element versus 58 millimeters, and the diameter is 3.6 inches versus 3.9 inches. So, and it's 2.5 times the weight easily, more almost 3 times the weight. We also have, let's see, we also have 21 elements and 13 groups versus 18 elements. So, but primarily it's because of the focal length, right? It has to be bigger. And then the to 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 have nearly perfect optical performance is going to require a lot of elements. So this lens has 21 elements, and that's going to add weight and size to the overall. So it's going to add length, right, to the overall dimensions of the lens. Uh, because the more corrections you try to make, the more elements you need to make those corrections, especially in a zoom lens, where the light path changes as you're zooming in and out. So there's a lot of complexity in lens design, especially zoom lenses, and to make them optically perfect. So I guarantee the 50 to 200 outperforms the 35 to 100 across the range. In fact, I know from my personal experience, because I have the 35 to 100, uh, I can see some imperfections in that lens, like chromatic aberrations and a little bit of softness in the corners, and it works better stop down. There's vignetting, et cetera, et cetera. I haven't used the 50 to 200, but I guarantee that that lens has a lot less of those kind of problems. Um, so that's why it's bigger. There is a simple rule. There is a direct inverse relationship between the size of the lens and the image quality. Like, for example, look at the Nikon, like 50 millimeter f1.8 or the Canon 50 millimeter 1.8. These are small lenses. They're not very big. And then look at like a Sigma lens, 50 millimeter. I don't think they make a 1.8, but the 1.4 is huge. I could even compare uh, my Nikon 50 millimeter 1.4 against the Sigma 50 millimeter 1.4, and the Sigma 51.4 is nearly double the size. So there's the 51.4 for Sony. Where's the Nikon version? I want the mirrorless. Well, we'll have to use the Sony because that's the only mirrorless version. And then Nikon 50 millimeter 1.4. So if we go back here, these are both f1.4 lenses, but the Sigma is 50% heavier. It's 240 grams heavier, and it has a much bigger front element, a 72 millimeter front element versus a 62 millimeter front element. And if you look at the overall dimensions, uh, the Sigma is about an inch longer, or in millimeters, it's wow, it's 20, looks like about 23 millimeters longer. But optically, right, I think it's safe to say the Sigma is going to be better optically. The Nikon Z 1.4 is kind of known as a vintage lens for modern cameras. It has sort of that classic rendering to it, which means it's imperfect, right? So it needs, let's see how many elements it has. Yeah, see, look, 14 elements and 11 groups. I know this is probably hard to see. The Sigma has 14 elements, 11 groups versus 10 elements and 7 groups. So the Sigma is working a lot harder to make all these optical corrections, thereby making a bigger, heavier lens. And that's why you can look at two lenses with the same focal length and aperture, but one is a lot bigger, right? Why is that? Well, it's because, one is working harder uh, to do all these optical corrections, like chromatic aberrations and all of that. Okay, so hopefully, Zach, that makes sense why that's the case. And Paul said, I was out in the storm today with my G9 Mark II. Yes, I'm sure the Panasonics have very good weather sealing as well. And AJ Cooper, good to see you. And I see the OM3 is just fun to use. I tried the XT5 and full frames camera, but none are that fun for me. The only thing I sometimes miss is the shallow focus, but I might as well get a cheap D810 for that. Right. Yeah, I mean the OM3, they're Micro Four Thirds is not going to give you that shallow, deep depth of field, given a certain field of view, right? Uh, given the same field of view between two cameras, so 25 millimeter lens on Micro Four Thirds versus a 50 millimeter lens on full frame, you're going to get a shallower field of view or shallower depth of field on a full frame camera. And a lot of people that buy their cameras for the first time, for whatever reason, that is a huge selling point. I mean, there's two people in my photo club that, you know, when we went out and they had their old DSLRs, and this was like a year ago or so, maybe 2 years for one of them. They envied my small, compact, lightweight setup. At that time I was going out with my Pen F usually and 75 to 300, and they just could not get away from getting a shallow depth of field. And this is the same person I talked about last month that, after a photo walk, because she ended up buying a Canon R5 Mark II and 100 to 500, whatever the Canon zoom is. And, after the photo walk, because we were out for about 4 or 5 hours, she's showing me her blister on her finger. I'm like, I tried to tell you, if you like birding and wildlife, you know, this is all you need, right? An OM1 and a 75 to 300. Or if you want to spend the money, go with a 300 f4 like I did. Or if you want to spend a lot of money, get the 150 to 500, 400. And she'd have been way ahead of the game because she spent like 10 grand on her Canon setup because the camera alone was like 4 grand at the time. And then another 2 grand on one lens, I talked her out of, thank God I talked her out of she wanted to get the 24 to 105 f2.8 from Canon. And I talked her out of that. I said, just get the f4, please. You're complaining already about size and weight. Just get the f4. There's not that much difference between 2.8 and f4 in terms of depth of field. And I showed her images side by side, right? F4, f2.8. And I said, is there really that much difference? Especially if you're going to be zooming in and shooting things from a distance, but and the other person, they ended up buying, I can't remember. I haven't seen them in a while. But it was the same reason. They wanted the shallow depth of field that a full frame gives them. And then when they go out, they're carrying these big, heavy lenses with their cameras. Because I get it, this is at best 100 grams lighter than some full frame systems. It's about 200 grams lighter than but I put the grip back on. So let's say it's still about 100 grams lighter than my Sony A7R5 without a grip, without the base plate. Uh, but I add a base plate to my Sony A7R5 as well. So this is easily over 200 grams lighter than my A7R5. The lenses are certainly smaller and lighter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it it's frustrating and I hate to say I told you so to them because they got nice cameras. They're nice cameras, nice lenses. They get great image quality, but they are complaining about the size and weight all the time. My other friend, she doesn't care about depth of field, right? She was worried about noise in her case. And so she bought a Sony A1 with and Sony 200 to 600 or 800, whatever that massive Sony lens is, zoom lens. But she can't hold the camera. She has to use it on a monopod with a gimbal, right? Because she's kind of small, right? But uh, and we go out side by side on photo walks. A lot of times I'll have my 75 to 300, sometimes my 300 f4. Either way, it's way smaller than her setup, and she's always commenting on how sharp my photos are compared to hers for the same shots, right? Because it's one thing to compare shots that are cherry picked from each camera system. It's another thing when two people are going out side by side, taking basically the same photos, because a lot of times it's like one bald eagle. Okay, everybody takes that shot, right? But she's always commenting how sharp my photos are from my small camera system. And, you know, when she was talking about getting another camera, she was going to get another Sony because she has her money invested in those lenses. So it made sense for her. But for the price, she paid full pop for that. Well, she traded in one of her cameras, but it was a $6,000 camera or 5,000, right? Which the A1 was 5,000 at the time. She could have easily bought an OM1 and a 300 f4 for the price of that A1 and hand holding her camera instead of walking around with a monopod, a gimbal, and this giant honking lens. You know what I mean? And get similar, if not the same, autofocus performance, similar, if not the same, image quality, right? For the kind of for birds and flight type stuff. Um, but it's hard. And then I can turn around, reach into my pocket, pull out my 60 millimeter f2.8, and do macro photography like that, right? I can switch over very quickly to macro, or switch back to birds in flight, or go back to street stuff, put my kit lens on, or I love this new lens I got, my 12 to 45 f4. This replaced my 12 to 40 f2.8 because that died. Uh, I love this lens. It's so compact and super sharp, really nice. I throw this on with some of my art filters that I like to use. My kaleidoscope or my swirly or my ND filters. I got all kinds of I'm a big filter guy. Um, I can switch back and forth from all different kinds of photography and just have one little messenger bag to carry it all, right? Uh, I could even get away with a fanny pack. Honestly, I could put the 60 macro, and uh, my 40 to 150 kit lens in a little fanny pack, and then carry my 300 f4 and camera on a strap, and I'm good to go for everything. I'm ready for everything, you know. Uh, and then of course we have in-camera stacking, uh, live comp. We have all kinds of other tools in the bag that we can do that other camera systems cannot. I mean, the fact that I can focus bracket with flash is huge. I think my Canon will focus bracket with flash. I'm not 100% on that. I have to try that again. I know my Fuji will focus bracket with flash, but I believe it's mechanical shutter. Anyway, uh, in-camera stacking, these things are amazing. And if I use high-res shot mode, I basically can get similar resolution. There's no substitute for actual real megapixels versus, a extrapolated, not extrapolated, but created 80 megapixels. But I can get really good results with the high-res shot mode over because in addition to the extra resolution, I get lower noise, right? So and that's why I feel like I'm such a fan of the Micro Four Thirds and OM systems in particular, of everything we can do with our cameras in a relatively small package overall. If I were to try to do the same thing with any other system, uh, I would be in trouble, right? What's the 90 macro lens? It's like this big. It's the same size as the Olympus 90 macro, but normally you get a 90 macro for your full frame cameras. It's like this big. If you go with a 300 f4 on full frame, it's about the same size as our 300 f4, but then you have to crop, and you're not going to get the same resolution as our Micro Four Thirds camera. And if you go with the you know super zooms or primes that are available for full frame, they're much bigger lenses, especially the 600 f4, and much more costlier, right? 600 f4 is what, 12 grand, something like that. Uh, I mean, we've all had this conversation, I think, at one point or another when we were deciding between systems, and we made our decision. Size, weight, cost will trump. Uh, will always be my choice. Having the smaller size, weight, and overall lower cost will always be my preference. Then other people, their preference is I want ultimate image quality, and I'll spend the money for the 600 f4 and the Sony A1 with 50 megapixels. Yeah, you're going to get a better image than an OM1 with a 300 f4, right? If you have a Sony A1 with a 600 f4, you're going to get a better image out of the Sony. But now you spent $20,000 instead of 5,000. You know what I mean? But sometimes that's priority, right? And I get that. And there's everything in between, that where ultimately you can find a balance between the two systems, right? Where you can downsize your full frame system so that it's only a little bigger than, say, a Micro Four Thirds system, but they'll never be equivalent. There's always going to be compromises, like a Sony A7C, right? Mark II or A7CR with a 40 millimeter f2 or whatever that small prime is. They have some small primes. They're f2s or f2.5s and 2.8s. Um, you can put something like that together, which is a killer street camera, versus, say, an OM3 or an OM5 Mark II with a 25 millimeter 1.8, right? An OM5 Mark II with a 25 1.8 is going to be smaller, lighter, cheaper than a Sony A7C Mark II, but not by much. Kind of, I mean, on paper, yeah, there's some significant differences, but in practice, the two cameras are about the same size, right? And that's the argument a lot of full frame people will give you is I can put together a full frame system that's about the same size and weight as the Micro Four Thirds system and get better image quality. I'm not going to argue that point. That's just a fact, right? But how much did you spend? What's an A7? They were shooting the older DSLRs, uh, and I talked them into Micro Four Thirds. I can think of 4 or 5 people off the top of my head that I directly influenced to get into the Micro Four Thirds systems, and they're as you know happy as can be with the system. Uh, anyhow, let's see. Ethan says, "Hey, Ethan. Ethan's. I framed your picture and put it up in my hallway. It's in a very prominent place. I see it every day." Ethan was very kind to send me a photo he took. Anyhow, what do you think about OM system maybe doing an OM20 rather than OM10 to get an even more basic camera out there? Yeah, so that's what I've been talking about for about a month now, uh, on and off, just briefly. But an OM20, right, would be awesome. Yeah, they need to get people into the system. They can't have these because the only people buying the OM1 and, well, let me rephrase that. The only people buying the OM3 are probably mostly legacy users, right? People that have been shooting Olympus forever. Uh, the price point is keeping people out of the system. And I believe the EM10 Mark IV, as old as that camera is now, is still one of their best selling cameras, at least in Japan. So that shows that there is demand for the less expensive cameras as much so as there is for their more expensive cameras. So I don't know why they haven't released one yet or had rumors or anything about it. And System Chore, good to see you. And Greg, Steve Kunder from Michigan, awesome. And Sim John's asking, what lens is that on that OM3? Oh, okay. So this is an adapted lens from the Pen F film camera. Uh, back in the whenever the Pen F film camera came out, it came with a set of lenses, and it's a rangefinder style camera. So the flange distance is very, very small. Um, so if you look at the adapter, if I can, well, all right, I'm not going to take it off. It's a little finicky to get it off the adapter, but you can see the adapter is only about a centimeter, right? It's a very, very small flange distance. So this is the lens with the adapter. The lens itself starts here where the aperture ring is. I'm sorry, the whatever that's called, the silver ring here. So it's actually about the same size as Olympus's own 25 1.8. So this is a 25 1.4, I'm sorry, 25 f4 lens, 25 millimeter f4, and it matches perfectly with this camera, doesn't it? So I get that manual focus experience. I also have a 38 1.8, which gets really nice shallow depth of field if I want it. This one doesn't have any depth of field to speak of, uh, but it has a very vintage look to it and wonderful flaring, wonderful soap bubble type bokeh, if there's any bokeh at all. And and then the focusing ring is smooth as butter. And then of course the aperture ring here is nice. So and I you can get this lens for about 200 bucks. So it's a little pricey. I got mine for like 100 because they said the aperture blades were a little bit slow. But I'm not using this on my Pen F film camera. I'm using it on here. So I don't care if the aperture blades are a little bit slow. In practice, I didn't see any problem with the aperture blades. They're not sticky at all. So I don't know what they're talking about when because you can push this and aperture blades open and close. They seem to open and snap and open nice and fine. But I won't really know until I actually use it on a film camera where it opens and closes the aperture blades when you're taking a picture. They may be slow, not slow to the visible eye, right? But slow to the camera. And then my pictures will be over underexposed uh, because the aperture blades didn't open and close enough. But uh, but if you want one in mint condition, this one's virtually in mint condition. But they made a statement that the blades were slow. But when you're adapting lenses, that's not an issue. Having a little bit of oil on the blades or having the blades a little sluggish doesn't really matter for mirrorless cameras when you're adapting them. It matters a lot though if you're going to use it on a film camera or like my Nikon DF, I can put on natively vintage f-mount lenses, right? D lenses with the screw drive, and my 50 millimeter 1.8, the blades are a little bit slow, so I can't use that lens except wide open, where it doesn't have to close the blades, or I can go to about f2.8 and it's okay. But if I try to shoot it like f5.6 or f8, my images are overexposed because the blades don't close or open fast enough. Um, okay. Uh, and Paul says, if you don't like the ergonomics, why are you buying the camera? You have to change the ergonomics. Why not get the camera with the ergonomics you prefer? Okay. Well, I totally get that. Um, the this camera is not about uh if you're referring to the OM3, right, and I'm buying a grip, and it doesn't matter if it's this camera or any other camera, even like the X-T5, a lot of people buy the accessory grip. A lot of people say that the OM3 is fine without a grip. For me, the grip was more about getting this full plate on the bottom. It's there as of now, it's very hard to find plate only, right? Every plate I've seen comes with a grip. So I wanted to get the smallest grip possible if it had one at all. The wood ones were too big because I would be fine with this even if it didn't have this grip. But my primary intent was for this plate. Like on my OM1, well, like if you look at my Fuji, I also have a full plate, but it doesn't need the grip because the camera already has a grip, right? So for me, the ergonomics were kind of okay either way. I just really primarily needed a plate. Now, you could argue I could have just put an Arca Swiss plate on here and be done with it. And I thought about that. I did. But having a little extra grip is nice too, right? Because although I don't really need the grip for handling too much, um, because most of the time I'm holding the camera this way, right? And then this hand is free to navigate the buttons and dials. When you're holding the camera just kind of like to your side or you're grabbing the camera to pick it up, it does feel a little more secure when you have some grip here and you get a little more stability. Uh, but this is not the kind of camera you buy for ergonomics, not at all. You buy this for the aesthetics, right? Uh, and not only the aesthetics, for me, it was also because it was you know, basically a flagship camera. It has all the features. This is my do-it-all everyday camera now. Just does everything, and uh, and I think it's stylish to boot. So, but yeah, I agree generally. Like if you're buying a camera, you wanna try it in your hand and see if it's comfortable and something you want to use. Like my EM1 Mark III was the most comfortable camera I ever used, and if that were the only consideration for me, that'd be the camera I'd use all the time. The OM1 is a little less ergonomic because of the way they designed the palm side of the camera. It doesn't come in too much, so it feels a little bit blockier in my hand. And but overall, it's a comfortable camera. Um, but I just don't enjoy using that camera for my more casual use, like my photo walks, even my birding. I prefer taking my OM3 because it just inspires me a little more than the OM1 does. The OM1 I definitely use for my paid work, like if I do events, if I do my architectural stuff. That's the OM1. That's my workhorse camera. And this is my fun camera for just about everything else. So it's not that if you're talking about me, it's not because I dislike the ergonomics of the OM3. I just wanted the plate. And the fact that I had a little grip doesn't hurt. It's just a bonus. And Body's here. Good to see you. And John McCormick, he says, I see the OM3 price in Asian markets are dropping 20 to 25% already. Okay, that's good. That's good for people in Asia. I mean, a lot of the perception when camera came out was it's too expensive. It should have been $1,500. I mean, there's a huge number of people out there that feel like that. I'm not one of them. I think it's worth the full asking price, but I'm kind of in the minority, I think. And now the uh, market is starting to reflect that, right? OM3 prices are coming down. And Roberto, hey Roberto, how are you? I watched your latest video too. Uh, For those of you that don't know Roberto, Roberto has a YouTube channel, and it used to be him and Jerry. That was kind of his thing, right? Unfortunately, Jerry passed away recently. His pet, dog, and it's been a while since he published a video since that happened. But it's good to see you back out there and continue to create. Um, I always enjoyed your videos before, so I look forward to what you're going to do going forward. And Plate was here. Good to see you, Darko. Says my 24 to 120 f mount Nikon F4 locks the zoom, and if you tilt it, it can be pulled back. Seemingly too expensive to fix. Oh, so there's pins inside the helicoil that are probably out of alignment, and usually they're plastic. So there's not really much you can do about it. Yeah, you can buy a 24 to 1 of, the F mount F4, you can probably buy that pretty cheap. I'm just guessing. Let's see, what does cheap mean anymore? $283. Yeah. Uh that's well used. All right. So excellent condition from MPB. Yeah, there's no point. But yeah, something in the helicoil, the little notches are plastic that go into the grooves. I forget what they're called. So Grandmaster, will the shape size of the L bracket on OM3 affect the way you take panoramas, as it doesn't go through the center of the sensor? So yeah, I haven't tried it yet, okay, because I just got the grip in this week, a couple days ago. But I'm gonna have to off center the L bracket, something like this. This is a skinny L bracket. Arca plates are wider, so you can slide this over and center if you need to, right? Where's a good example? Like it's like my favorite tripod here. I have a Let me tighten that down. I have sort of a wider plate here or clamp. So you just need to off center it like that, and then I can use the screen as a benchmark, and that's fine, right? So it's no problem to hopefully you can see that. If I can line this up. I'm just off centering the bracket. There's still plenty of bite in that. So you don't have to worry about that. I thought about that, but then when I thought about it more, I said, "Oh, well, I can just off center the bracket itself, and it'll be fine." Oh, $280. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't do it. I would just buy another one. Time for 24 to 400. Sure, why not? I thought it was 24 to 200. But anyway, uh, loved my T5i until my 5D Mark II. It's funny, I was just looking at a 5D Mark III yesterday. I'm always shopping. I have so much gas. There's an amazing tiny little Fuji camera that fits in your pocket. I can see that thing walking out the door. M43 needs to compete with this. Uh, I assume you're talking about the little XM5. Is that what it's called, or the XM5? but that's not a $500 camera. It's more like 900, right? 899. But I'm curious. I don't have a feel for how well the individual cameras from Fuji are selling. I think clearly the X100V or VI, the X100 series is probably their best selling. I'm just guessing. The XE4, well, it's the XE5 now. That's probably going to sell well. Although I didn't like it when I saw it in person. I did see that camera in person at some event. But I don't know if OM Systems or Micro Four Thirds can compete in that space. At least not yet. They need to get people in because think about it. OM Systems, when they took over, they had probably a choice to develop an OM3 or a PenF Mark II. PenF Mark II would be more along the lines of what I think what you're talking about, and they went OM3. Um, but yeah, I think given their bandwidth of capability to develop cameras and put them on the market, I would personally steer them more towards an OM20 and then introduce if they can do both at the same time, that would be awesome, right? Bring out an OM20 and a little small pocketable camera. But are you talking about like a fixed lens camera like the X100 for from OM Systems? That would be interesting, but that would be a tough sell in the current market. It's just so competitive. And Fuji being Fuji and the Ricoh GR4, these two cameras are pretty much hard to beat. Anthony says, I'm very pleased with my own one Mark II. That does not mean they shouldn't introduce a new higher resolution camera. They need to excite the Micro Four Thirds market with the all new OM Mark III sensor. Remains to be seen. I don't think the Mark III will have a new sensor either. Um, the OM1 Mark II has been out, what, a little over a year now? So we got maybe another year, two, maybe a year or two left before they come up with a Mark III. I just don't see that happening. Now, if you want to look at it from a sensor perspective, the new sensor came out with the OM1 Mark I, and that's been out in since 2023, right? When did I get mine? Maybe I got it in 2022. I have a folder here. But anyway, let's say it's 5 years between the OM1, that new sensor, and the current 20 mega, that's 20 megapixel stack sensor came out. It's got a minimum 5-year life cycle with OM systems. Again, all my opinion. So I would venture to guess it might be 2028 before we see any upgrade to the sensor. I think what will generate excitement is not so much a new sensor or new computational features. Honestly, they need to come out with an OM20. I just feel like that's where they need to go. I mean, trust me, if they come out with an OM20, I'm buying one. Hands down. I'm going to buy it. And That's because I know everything that Micro Four Thirds can do. And if you're at a $500 price point, uh, that's that would not be a hard sell at all. It's a little harder sell with a $2,000 Micro Four Thirds camera because you can get a $2,000 ZF. And I can talk about all the computational and bird and flight and shutter speeds, and I can talk about all that till I'm blue in the face. It's going to be a tough. It's still a tough sell, right? To a lot of people that are looking at buying another camera. Uh, but a $500 camera, that's not a tough sell, or it shouldn't be. And if they can make it kind of cool and stylish, like make it look like make it come out with an OM20 that looks like the original OM20 film camera. Something like that would be really cool for $500. I want to see and hold the new lens. It seems here in Michigan there are fewer and fewer dealers that stock OM Systems cameras. Yeah, that's true everywhere. I mean, there's few dealers to begin with where I live. We got two, Ace Photo and District Camera. Best Buy doesn't carry it. There's no place to go to physically, and a lot of times they're low on stock or out of stock because they'll order a certain number in maybe twice a year. They order stock from OM Systems, if that, maybe once a year they order, but I think they order about twice a year, aside from maybe a new camera release, right? But twice a year they'll order stock for from OM Systems, and if they sell out, like my dealer is sold out of beige color OM5 Mark IIs. Thank God, because I would have one right now otherwise. But it looks like a nice small lens. If that focal length interests you, and the fact that it's a 2.8 is pretty awesome. Uh, and the price is not an issue, then yeah. Dark was asking, Rob, processing wise, does the OM3 equal your OM1 other than a few firmware differences? Yes. They use the same processor, so it's the performance is virtually identical. I can't tell any difference in the performance between the two. I will say, and I haven't tested this exhaustively, but my gut feeling, I feel like the OM1 focus brackets a little better, or a little faster, or a little longer. I don't know. But I was doing some testing the other day because I had that IT30 Pro flash that I just did a review on, and I was comparing it to the OM1 and the OM3, and I was testing on both cameras to see the bracketing performance. And even though the OM1 has, the OM1 and OM3 have virtually the same buffer, right? Um, it felt like the OM1 was able to write to the card faster and thereby bracket longer without interruption. But I'm not 100% on that right now. But short answer is no, there's no difference. And Larry's asking, Rob, why are MFT sensors limited to 10-bit color? They are not. They are 12-bit, as far as I know. If you're referring to the video, uh, 10-bit color is probably because of bandwidth in terms of processing power and writing to the memory card, because it just uses a standard SD card. But that said, uh, technically, I believe the sensor is capable of 14-bit photo color, but they use 12-bit. And for video, it is limited to 10-bit. My suspicion is that it's due to bandwidth, right? Writing internal bandwidth of processing power. because going from 10-bit to 12-bit is a huge leap with respect to the number of colors you have to process and store and write to a memory card. Um, for example, you take a 8-bit JPEG image, it's like 10, 11 megapixels, right? A 12-bit raw image is closer to 20 megapixels, so nearly double, right? In size. So it's not that much difference when going from uh, 8-bit 8-bit video to 10-bit video, or 8-bit, images to 10-bit images. There's a substantial leap, at least 50%, if not more. I don't know what the math is exactly in my head, but that is my suspicion as why it's limited to 10-bit color depth in video, but for photo it is 12-bit. And going to 14-bit, and there's medium format cameras that do 16-bit, you know, you do get a little more color depth, but it's not visible because think about it. Most people's monitors that they look at, with their computers and their televisions, they're all 8-bit. Some are interpolating 10-bit through some prisms, some kind of technology. And true 10-bit monitors are really expensive, $1,000+ Uh, but yeah, we're kind of getting beyond the scope of what I know about these things, so I'll kind of leave it there. My suspicion is it's bandwidth for video. Adam says, would you have interest in a hybrid half case? I know they used to make them with Arcosys compatibility in the base. It would likely be missing the L bracket, though. Yes. Um, but I like this little tiny L bracket on here. So I guarantee, though, if they came out with that half leather case with the Arca Swiss plate on the bottom, I wouldn't have bought this. But this makes just the camera overall a much smaller profile. Uh, and this is a nice add-on. This is a bonus for me. Just because I'm really into panos. I've been doing most of my panos in portrait mode and just doing multiple rows. Because ultimately you get the same field of view when you start. You can get any field of view you want depending on how many rows and columns you make in your panos. But having a vertical would be kind of fun too, because then I could take, like, let's say I don't want to do a 30 shot multi-row pano. I can just do like 3 verticals and be done, right? Also, 300 f4 is still magical. It is. It's an awesome, awesome lens. And I was using the 150 to 600, and some storms and wind damage on the lens was so hard to handle. Yes, there were storm warnings. So yeah, so it's just windy, so it's hard to handle, huh? Yeah, I could see that. Especially if you have the lens hood, right? Maybe if you took the lens hood off, it'd have been a little easier. And Adam Parr says, chasing shallow depth field, easier to fake it in post-processing. Also, your intro camera, is there any benefit to a smaller form factor? Do you bundle the 14 to 42 easy, or is it that too small? No, I think, you know, think about it. If they come out with an OM20 with a 14 to 42 easy lens, and it looks like the original OM20 film camera to some extent, like an OM3, I think that would be a winner. And keeping it nice and compact is a huge selling point. Well, it's a huge talking point, at least on YouTube. Every time you see a small and light camera come out, it's always, man, look how small and compact and light this is, and you can just fit this into a coat pocket or whatever. Nothing's going to beat a GR3 or GR4 for pockability, but definitely it's a huge talking point on YouTube. And I think ultimately it'll make a big influence in how the camera, sells. Ran into a guy with a nil. I don't know what a nil is. You can't bring back detail in the background, but all sorts of filters and routines blur it out. Yes. Yeah, you can do post processing if you need the blur. I could see doing that sometimes. Uh, if I did more portrait work, I might consider doing that because it's easy to do, right? You just create a mask and blur it out. Um, I can show you an example of where I did that, and it came out pretty good. If my computer doesn't crash trying to pull it up, we'll wait for it. So here's an example, right? Uh, this is the unedited picture straight out of Camera Raw, and this is the edited picture, so it's a little brighter, and I created sort of this fake shallow depth of field, right? So specifically, this is the plane of focus, but because Micro Four Thirds has a deeper depth of field, all the leaves are here in focus. And then towards the background, it is kind of blurred out. But if we zoom in, you can see that these leaves are still in focus, which makes sense because it's almost in the same focal plane as the person here, right? But then as we back off, it gets a little blurrier and then a little bit in focus because these leaves are a little bit closer and these leaves are in focus. So it's not like a simple, uh, let's go over here. Let's go to the same. Like these leaves are out of focus here. I'm sorry, in focus on this image, but they're out of focus here. But the leaves in the front are more in focus. At the same time, the background is out of focus right here because this is, in terms of depth, these are the ground is further back. And I also blurred back here a little bit more than it is blurred out here. So when you do it like this, and it didn't take that long to do this, when you do it like this, uh, it's very, very convincing that this was taken with a uh, shallower depth of field than this image, right? Because typically what people do, let me just reset this. Typically what people do is and a lot of AI software does this as well, but they'll just take a linear gradient and draw a line down and then blur the background. But see, now the problem is, right, they're blurred out. So you have to create a mask. Uh, hopefully, crap. It's not going to work at the same time that I'm using. Anyway, you get the idea. Uh, some people just blur that way, and then they mask out the person. But then the leaves and everything are going to be. It's going to look fake. It's going to look like a fake bokeh. And that's the problem with a lot of cell phones that have the bokeh thing built in, and a lot of other software that tries to create fake bokeh. It doesn't take into account the depth of field or the distance of different objects in the frame. So I create a mask and then I just brush out areas that should be in focus and other areas that can stay out of focus. And that's how I came up with that image. So I just started to use the EM1 Mark II from an EM5 Mark II. I'm getting a lot of misses. Focusing seems slower. Any thoughts? Ooh, that should not be the case. The EM1 Mark II is way fast. It's like a whole different camera when it comes to autofocus. Uh, the only thing I would tell you to check for is the lens release. Where's my? I have an EM5 Mark III, which is the same as the EM1 Mark II. I think it's in my bag actually. Let me see. No, it should be. Well, here it is. So in the C menu, okay, C menu, you want to look for this SAF release priority and CAF release priority. Make sure they're both turned off and see if that helps. That would be that would be my primary recommendation. Without being standing right next to you and seeing what the issue is, that's the only thing I can think of. Rob, time for an A9 Mark III. Camera prices are just too much for me, especially as it's a hobby now. Yeah, me too. I'm not doing an A9 Mark III. I mean, I hardly use my A7R Mark V. Is it A7R5? Yeah, I hardly use that thing. DxO PL9 just crashed for me trying to duplicate a mask. No. Uh, I just updated to the latest driver for NVIDIA, and the latest driver, which was released a few weeks ago, I don't know, the two latest drivers seem to be crashing more. So I'm gonna have to go back to my original driver that I was using, 5.68 or whatever that NVIDIA driver is. That one was pretty reliable except for subject detect. But using the other AI tools like the rectangle and the mouse pointer, it's faster anyway than using subject detect. I don't think the subject detect is quite ready for prime time. But the other AI masking tools, the rectangle tool and the mouse pointer tool, are great, and they work perfectly. Like I just did a 2.5 hour live stream editing photos live using Photolab 9. I don't think it crashed the whole time, but I was avoiding the subject detect tool, right? And I've said this many times during the stream, the subject detect and going back to the previous driver version. Uh, Hopefully they'll get that fixed. And people are reporting like their Apples and Radeon, the not Radeon, AMD graphic cards are not crashing at all. They're working just fine. It's something to do with NVIDIA. So NVIDIA needs to fix their driver and or work with Photolab or DxO to fix this issue. He says, I carried an EP5 on a skinny shoulder strap all day and that didn't feel good. Can't imagine carrying a full. Yeah, I know. And Peter says, I ran into a guy with a Nikon Z9 and a 200 to 600. I'm sure it's great setup, but the outfit was the size of, yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, it just, it is what it is, right? You'll get great image quality, but you pay dollars and you also pay in size and weight. Darko says, Rob, you just know how to shoot and edit to get the images you get. Knowledge is your weapon. Oh, I try. That's all I can say. You should probably sell some full frame stuff. I have a Sony 20 mm G, technically near perfect, but far larger than the Laowa 10. I haven't touched it in 2 to 3 years. Yeah, I know. I should sell my Sony. I'll probably get a good price for it. I think it's still under 10,000 clicks. Last time I checked, it was like 7,000 something, but that was about 6 months ago. And I've been testing lenses for it since then. And Darko says, where do you use your R8 Pro or Creative Work? Just for fun. I use it primarily actually for when I go out with students that have Canon cameras. I bring my Canon camera so that we can be on the same page and find things on the menu. But that's about it. It's a good camera though. I should take it out more. It's a really fabulous camera for the money. Of course, they're a little pricey now because they've kind of gone up in price. So I don't know if I buy it again at that price, but for 1,200 bucks, I think it's a great camera. Also, Rob or anyone else, have you found the little plastic cases like the ones that come with the BLX1 batteries? No, I have not. I haven't looked for them. I'm just careful to put my batteries in the bag in a place that it's not going to touch anything else metal. And Shri is here. Good morning, Shri. Did you go to the air show? There was an air show yesterday at the base. It's only a mile from my house. So I grabbed a few pictures from my backyard. Let me just go there. But I took all these from my backyard from the air, because they fly right over my house. And this one actually is a composite because they were so close, I couldn't fit all the planes in one frame. So I combined like 3 or 4 frames together to create this image. But it was the same formation. I captured this part and then the middle and then the back. So it's 3 or 4 frames combined. But the detail is pretty good. This one was pretty far away, but I still got pretty decent detail on it. And this one was also very, very far away. This is cropped into less than 1 megapixels. And that's the whole thing. The plane itself is probably about zero point 0.2 megapixels. Again, very, very far away. This one is cropped into 4 megapixels. So this actually might crop in a little bit better. Very far away here. And this one was pretty close. So I was listening, waiting to hear it, and you don't hear it until they're almost right on top of you. Because they could be like, right in front of you. But if they're coming toward you, I don't know. I can't hear it too well. So I'm looking around for it, and I said, "Oh, there he is!" And then within a split second, that guy was over my head, like that. I was like, I saw him like I just saw them coming. So I tried to get my camera up, and I tried to focus, and in a split second, they were over my head, and that's how I got that shot. So I wasn't able to frame the whole I wasn't able to frame the whole picture, the whole airplane. He flew out. This is the top of the frame here, and then over here, the other 2/3 of the frame is just all sky. But that's a um, pretty good shot otherwise. What's my shutter speed? Oh, my shutter speed was a little low at 1/2000, so it's not as tack sharp as it could have been. But I was with the 300 f4 with the 1.4 teleconverter. If I didn't have the teleconverter on, I probably would have got him in the frame. But he was so fast, right over my head. It's crazy. Oh, the leaves are changing. I'm kind of got mixed feelings. I'm sad because it's getting cold. I've had to wear a jacket a couple of times this past week. Oh, I hate the winter time. But I'm happy because we're going to get some nice fall colors. And Marsh is here. Good morning. And Wayne, good to see you. Paul. Oh, you're a fellow Aussie. That's right. You're also from Australia. My question to the people saying the OM3 is too expensive is always show me the fully stacked sensor camera, let alone one with the features, build quality, etc. Yeah. So, Contrail and I are kind of on the same page. I think it's really worth what they were asking. Uh, but you and I think, are in the minority. As I always say, camera's worth what people pay for it. An XC5 is 3,000 in Australia. I don't know how that translates to the US. And Lauren says the OM5 for 900 bucks was a decent deal. After using the camera, I'm happy enough. I do find the focusing of my GX9 to be faster, but overall, I do like the OM5. My Nikon Z5 remain a deal. Yeah. How's it going, Lauren? Yes, 14-bit high res. Hey, Marco, how are you? Yes, 14-bit high res on the OM1. And Juliet, hi, finally making it back to your live stream. Just saying hi. It's good to see you, Juliet. And Henning says, recommend a base plate for the OM1 Mark II. I love my three-legged thing Arcus plate for its orange copper color, but it's a smidge too long and blocks the battery open. Oh, yeah, the really right stuff makes one. Um, you have to go to like Adorama or B&H to get it. It's a little heavy, but it's this one here. You can get it with the L bracket or without the L bracket. Wow, what a huge difference. Oh, they're out of stock. Uh, so it looks like you're gonna have to get it with the L bracket. I mean, if money's not a problem, I'll give you my affiliate link for this one. Okay. Yeah, I think I put the screen up, right? This this one. Without this L bracket, it's only $90, but it's out of stock. So that's my recommendation there. It is heavy though. It adds some bulk to your camera. Base plate or an L bracket might be a better choice. Yeah, that's the only choice for the OM1 that I'm aware of. And Thomas says, late to the show from Atlanta, Georgia. What did I miss? My excuse is weather, sunny, a touch of autumn. Yeah, it's beautiful out. It's a beautiful day today here too. And oh my goodness, Robin Wong, how are you, buddy? Good to see you. Robin's always been a great friend. and to the channel, and participates a lot in this live streams and also for our annual Micro Four Third meetups. So, and I'm also a big fan of Micro Four Thirds, of course, right? And he's done such a good job on his streams, so much better than me. So I'm really glad that he's made himself available for live streams and being able to answer questions and talk about topics from a perspective that only Robin Wong can give, right? So it's good to see you. Mr. Benz has got your great shot. Oh, thank you. And you have your heating on. I know, right? I ordered a new heat pump style heater window unit. So we'll see how that does this winter, if it can help temper some of my heating costs, because they're supposed to be really efficient. Um, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Ugh, wintertime is so expensive. My utility bills in the winter are like 700 a month. Um, I mean, that's more than half I make, you know, in total. And Julio says, I used the one and love it. Leap Photo LPO L plate. Oh, so Leo Photo makes one. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So let's find one of these, because if that might be half the price of the really right stuff, and maybe smaller and lighter. Unless, of course, this, wow, it's cheap, but it's this one. You can buy directly from Leo Photo. So I'll give you the link to this one. Thank you, Julio. I didn't know that existed. That's awesome. Hey, doing really great in yourself. We all love you. Don't forget that. To everyone watching, please smash the like. Oh, thanks, Robin. You're too kind. You have coal heating. That's hilarious. Watch out for the carbon monoxide. You'll be all right, though. Okay, I think I got all of the chat. Amazing. So let's see if there was anything else I could elaborate on. I don't think John is here. Maybe I'll wait till John Follows usually comes on Fridays to the photo editing streams. But he was he's sending me images that are on his food or his Nikon Z, one of his Nikons, I forget which one, with the Viltrox 23 millimeter f1.4, and they always look a little soft to me, and they shouldn't be, because I have that same lens, but for my Fujifilm, and it's always been tack sharp. So I was trying to find anything I took with that lens. Problem is, I just don't shoot my Fuji very often. In fact, I've taken 87 pictures with it this year, but this might be the 23. No, this is the 15 millimeter. So I only took it one time this year, and that was to shoot to review a lens. This is a great lens, by the way, the 15 millimeter from Viltrox. Let me look in 2024 if I did anything with it then. XH2 in 2024, I got 800 images there. Well, technically 400 because it's half JPEG, right? And I didn't use the 23 millimeter at all. How about in 2023? 2023, okay, here we go. I took 1,000 images. So here's the Viltrox lens. Here's some architecture. Let me find a raw image. That's not like high ISO. How about this? This is ISO 125. That looks good to me. Um, I need some more architectural type stuff though. There's a portrait. I mean, that looks tack sharp to me. Not that we want to look up somebody's nose, but let's look at the hair and the skin. That's 400%. That's the JPEG. Let's see the RAW. That looks really good to me. How about 200%? That's a little too close. I mean, you can see the eyelashes, everything. This lens looks really sharp to me. Go down here. Here's some architecture. 400%. And that's the embedded preview, but how about the raw image? Yeah, I don't see any problems with this lens. And if I were to process this with DxO, this would be even better. I mean, that's a 400% crop. How about 300 or 200? And I'm at what? I'm wide open at f1.4. Well, anyway, didn't want to bore you guys with that, but I don't know, John, if you're watching, I don't see any, I don't really see any problems with my copy. It looks tack sharp to me. Man, you guys live in some warm weather. I use the Arcus plates on both my M5 Mark II and Pen F. Yep. I've kind of switched to a half leather case on my Pen F without the Arca plate because I don't really use that camera as much anymore. I now use primarily my OM3. This is this has replaced the Pen F almost completely, and my Pen F now is uh, been relegated to the shelf. So I have two of these. I might sell one. I don't really need two of these anymore because now I have my OM3. For street, the Lumix 15 or 14 rocks super quick focusing, at least with Lumix cameras, and should be good with your OM3. Yeah, I have the 17-1.8. I know the 15 is a better lens, uh, but I just can't justify buying a 15-1.7 when I have a 17-1.8. Doesn't make sense to me. And I'd rather shoot with the kit lens anyway, because that'll go to 14. And this one, although it's technically not a kit lens, it's a pro lens. This 12-45 is freaking awesome. I really love this lens because, like I said, I like to use filters a lot too, and it's just easier to use filters on a 58 millimeter thread than it is a 37 millimeter thread. I do have a polarizer on my kit lens, and I adapted a red filter. Headache of using all these step rings for my infrared stuff. Um, but I haven't had a chance to go out with this much. I'm gonna try and do that this week though. Maybe today. And Ben wants to know who's Mr. Ben wants to know who wants an OM3 in black. And John says, "Hi, Rob, still here. I'll be taking that Viltrox out with a tripod as soon as possible, but when the weather improves. Oh, okay, so you are here. Okay. So there's yeah. I mean, mine looks really good. Let me look at another one. Since I know you're here, I can I can dive in a bit. Uh, Let me find another example. These are all landscape shots. Okay, how about this tree? Well, that's a bit overexposed. How about this tree? So, like, I'm looking at this tree and I'm at f5.6. Now, this looks a little soft actually at 5.6. So, you know what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go out and deliberately test different scenarios because for the architecture, it looks really good. How about this tree? This tree looks pretty good. And this is at f4.8. Actually, this one's a little bit soft too. It's kind of weird. It seems like it's sharper wide open than it is top down. Let me go up. This is at f2.5. So, like, if you look at this is at f2.5, and I'm zoomed in to 200%. Let's go to 400. Oh, wait, this is the 33 1.4. Sorry about that. XH2. Where's this one? So here's a picture of Ellie. Yep, tack sharp there. Here's some architecture at f5.6. Yeah, this lens is very, very sharp because this is at 5.6. That's the depth of field. My focus point was probably right down in here. These were panoramas. These don't count. But yeah, that we can't look at those. Anyway, I'm gonna have to test it, like specifically test it for sharpness. Because you know how it is with random photos. You don't know where the focus point was or anything like that. But just my initial impressions, this lens, like here's some more architecture. This lens looks really good to me. All right, where are we here? Still thinking about, oh yeah, I have a lot of shots with the 7 to 14, thousands of them actually, because I use that for my work. Uh, Linda Martha, always wonder how you keep all those cameras in your shelf dust free. I dust them actually all the time. I'm not a clean nut or freak, okay, but uh, I do time to time take a little time to dust and clean a couple of times a week, different things in my house. So some days I'll do the living room, other days I'll do the kitchen, then other days I'll do this office, clean the mouse pads and the mouse itself and all the gear. I'll clean everything off. So I don't do it all in one day. I just kind of spread out a little bit each day. Okay, so 7 to 14, I have so many examples. Uh, I'll just show you some of my paid work because that's all I use it for, really. Let me go to my client folder. And I've done some for Lisa recently. All right, so this is typical 7 to 14 type work. Super wide. It's great for architecture, and you can see it's very, very sharp. Where you run into problems is flaring. I don't think I have any examples of flaring here because I would never deliver that to a client. Um, Here's an exterior. These are 2 megapixel images, by the way. This one here is, oh no, this one is full size. But this lens is very, very sharp. I think I might have some older pictures that have some of the flaring. Uh, if I remember, was it this? Yeah, I probably didn't deliver these. Another cloudy day. These are all like office spaces and stuff. But here, here's another example. Yeah. So I love the 7 to 14, but you just have to be careful of the purple flaring. I wish I had an example I could show you right off the bat, but it would take me too long to find one because I usually delete them after I deliver the images to the client. But other than that purple flaring issue, which I've learned to work around, uh, it's a great lens. Yeah, landscapes. So landscapes and street photo, it's fabulous. You just have to be careful, like I said, with the flaring. Thanks, Rob. Getting back out there, going to photo exhibitions to get some inspiration. Yep. Yeah, once you get into photography, you notice dust everywhere. That's true. Um, I don't think I have a folder on my Flickr page specifically for that lens because I've only used that lens for client work, which I don't generally publish online. But I'll take a look. Maybe I do. Let me see. I did publish, but these are like low light photos. This is not. So this is online. Uh, this is highly processed, so it doesn't really count. And then this was a ISO 100,000 or so. Oh, yeah, ISO 65,000. So you can't really count this one. This is also a low light photo, 12,800. But I'll give you the link to this album. Uh, I mean, looking at it directly is a little better than looking at it through a stream, right? But those are not good examples of what this lens can do. Whoops, 7 to 14. So there's a link if you want to look at those images. Those are not good examples. Actually met George Byrne today. I like his photos for his book too. Cool. I don't know who he is, but that's cool. It's always neat to meet people that you admire. Festival of Tina is coming up this afternoon for me. Yeah, go for it, man. Mr. Ben says, thanks, Rob. Yeah. So that one sepia kind of picture in the tunnel, that one's pretty sharp. And you can expect that kind of sharpness from that lens. It's a very, very sharp lens. It's just the purple flaring is a pain in the ass with that lens. I bet I can find it real quick. Let me find one. Let me look at something from 2022. On my OM1, I had some good jobs back then. The Lumix raw. So sometimes I just wait for a cloud to come over the sun or but sometimes I get it on interiors too. I don't know if I can find a good example. Like there might be some here. It's a little bit, it's hard to see. There's some purple flaring here because of these lights, because these are very strong speculars in this space. And sometimes when I have points of light like this, these are not very bright though. Here it is again here. There's a big purple blob here. Even though it's cloudy out, the light is so strong. You know, here I have the light to my back, so it's not a problem. But when I have the light coming in directly in front of me like this, there is some very mild purple hazing here. And I have examples where it's much worse. But as you can see, for most of the images, I've been able to work around it and avoid it. But sometimes it'll pop up when I don't want it to. But thankfully, Photoshop AI fixes a lot of it now. And my cams, I mean, not my dust. I kind of lost you there. Why do you think it gets purple fringing? It's the coatings on the lens. Panasonic uses it's primarily the coatings that they use on the lens because the flaring is caused by reflections between the lens elements, right? So you have, say, a dozen lens elements, light is bouncing off of each one back and forth. So they're using a coating that causes that. Um, doesn't the 7 millimeter go all fisheye? No. I mean, there's a lot of wide angle distortion, but it's not fisheye by any means. Um, let me find a 7 millimeter image that's not overexposed. This is an image of 7 millimeters. This table is curved. This is not a fisheye effect. This table is curved. Uh, let me find another one. That one is 7 millimeters. Very rectilinear. No problems there. How about this one? Yep, this is also 7 millimeters, all rectilinear. So yeah, no, it's fine. The 7 to 14, no problem. I had one more question to gauge photo work these days. Okay. I had the 7.5 and it's fine. Yep. How is my real estate work coming these days? Far and few between. Uh, I might get 7 or 8 jobs a year at this point. It's not very much. Uh, I lost 2 clients, I think primarily because of pricing, and they just found someone cheaper, and I raised my prices a little bit. I mean, I lost one, two, three, yeah, 3 clients I lost over the last few years. I assume because of pricing. Maybe my work sucks. I don't think so because I see on their websites the work that their current photographer's doing. It's not as good as mine. I can tell you that. So he's got to be cheaper. Uh, but yeah, I lost 3 clients, and I have to assume it's pricing because the work that I see on their websites now for the properties that they're selling, it's not as good as my work. There's because they don't really use flash very much. They try to HDR everything. The perspectives aren't right. The the elements that they include in the composition don't really show the important things about the property, in my opinion. So there's a lot of technical and subjective errors, in my opinion, compared to my work, right? Not that my work is top tier. I'm not top tier work, but I'm very good. And the work that I'm seeing from their current photographer is fair, depending on what they're charging, which has to be less than me. It better be less than I'm charging for the work that they're getting. Like I looked at some of their video work. It's just he's just on a gimbal and he's just doing this and not even walking around. He just sets it on a tripod and just rotates the camera left and right, goes to the next room left and right. Whereas, I was on a gimbal, I had sliders, I had dollies, I was like all in on the video. Uh, so I charged a pretty penny for it. And rather than ask me, can I do, can I do lower the price? They didn't even ask, can I lower the price? You know, I just They just stopped calling me, um, and that's fine. I'd rather not do subpar work anyway, because if I lowered the price, I'd have to do less work. So the clients I have now are happy with my work and the prices I charge, but the work is far and few between. Okay, I had 5 inquiries on weddings, and I do not do. I know, right? Yeah, I'll do a wedding for free, like for a friend or something, but I'm not going to do a paid wedding. I'm just not. I'm not doing it. Said there are some rules for house selling and not showing a false perspective. True, that is true. Um, but typically, they include a floor plan. Expenses come out of their pocket up front with no guarantee of the house selling. So they're trying to minimize their upfront cost and then and then. But anyway, but okay, guys, I think I'll call it here. I've been on too long. The stream is buffering. It's saying stop, stop. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. It's always fun hanging out with you guys. And I'll be back on Tuesday for some shopping and then Friday for photo editing. So I look forward to seeing you all there with me. And if you'd like to support the work that I do here, my live streams and anything else, you can buy me a coffee, make a donation, or just subscribe, like the video. Those work too. Um, Thanks again, and I hope to see you again soon.